This is my first ever interview with an enemy combatant, a commander from Russia's infamous Wagner Group. There's a little bit of a language barrier with this one, so bear with us because there is some very interesting information in this episode. And if you can bear with the language barrier, I think you're going to get a lot out of this and learn a lot about Wagner Group, how they came about, their training, and the caliber of men that they had working there. Enjoy the show. Marat Gabidullin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
John, thank you for being here. Wanted to bring you on here to fill in a couple of gaps with the language barrier.
Sure.
Marat Gabidullin, born in Ural, you grew up in Uzbekistan and joined the Soviet military in 1984. Served as a paratrooper officer and commanded a recon company. Then joined Russia's Wagner Group, starting as a grunt, fighting ISIS in Syria and rising all the way to commander. You worked closely with Wagner boss Prigozhin, advising the ISIS hunters in Syria, and fought in the Battle of Khasham in 2018 against U.S. and Kurdish forces. You then quit Wagner in 2019, authored a book about your time with Wagner, and since then you have moved to France, where you are now seeking asylum. This interview is taking place in Paris. Obviously, we couldn't get you to the U.S., so we came here to meet you. It's really weird for me to say this, but you are an enemy combatant, and you fought in a skirmish in Syria against 40 U.S. soldiers, Special Forces soldiers, and I'm friends with a couple of those guys and heard their account of that battle. And then we ran into your friend John Lechner and asked to be connected with you. So I just want to thank John. A freelance journalist, writer, and researcher who's been in conflict zones across the globe. Author of the book Death is Our Business, Russian Mercenaries and the New Era of Private Warfare. Expert on Russia's moves in Africa, their foreign policy, and private military companies. So thank you again for being here. But
thanks for having me.
I want to dive in on a little bit of the history of Wagner Group.
Yeah.
And so how did it start?
Well, so as Marat was telling you, Wagner really began in 2014, and Marat, as he was saying, he joined the company, as they call it. They only on the inside call it the company. Wagner Group itself as an entity never existed. It was sort of just a nickname that was given to it.
Some of my friends told me that in Russia emerged some kind of structure where I can start my life from the very beginning.
Wagner initially came out of the war in eastern Ukraine, and its founder was a guy, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who Marat has mentioned a couple of times. This is a guy who was born in the 60s in the Soviet Union and sort of grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. He was a petty thief and kind of a small-time gangster in his teenage years, and he goes away to prison at the age of 18, if I remember correctly, for assault and robbery. He and his gang were on a street in Leningrad, which became St. Petersburg, and Prigozhin came up behind a woman and strangled her until she almost died, and then they robbed her, and he was caught and sent away for 9 years. And when he gets out, the Soviet Union is collapsing around him, and he returns to his native St. Petersburg, where first he falls in with some gangsters again in the 90s, which Marat had kind of alluded to previously with these various crime bosses and things. And so he falls in with some crime bosses himself, and they set him up as a manager of some grocery store chains. He eventually turns that into becoming a restaurateur of some very kind of fancy restaurants in St. Petersburg that a younger Vladimir Putin enjoyed, and he leveraged those relationships to eventually get getting the job of providing meals to the whole Russian military and the Russian school system.
So he became close with Putin through his restaurant tours.
Well, as you'll see, kind of as we go through the story, he manages to connect with Putin. Putin likes him, but he's never able. He would always say that he was about one handshake away from Putin, and so Putin gets to know him. He kind of likes him because he's uncouth. He's kind of has that sort of rough kind of attitude, which is somewhat refreshing given kind of the bureaucratic elite that are surrounding Putin. And so Prigozhin eventually gets this job to provide the meals for the Russian military. And so that takes us to around 2014 or so when, well, we have to go back a little bit further. So, while he's doing this work as a contractor, he also is looking for different ways that he can look good and get on Putin's radar. One of the ways he does it is there were massive protests against Putin's return to the presidency in 2012. And so Prigozhin puts together this kind of documentary that shows how all the protesters are fake, basically supported by the West. And, he finances it himself. It's not like Putin is doing this, but it's a way to virtue signal and show, hey, I'm furthering the cause of, Putin's cause and Russia's cause more broadly. And so, as I said, Putin is coming to the presidency again in 2012. There are massive destabilizing protests against it. And he navigates it and gets back into power, but pretty much fairly quickly thereafter, another revolution is happening, this time on Russia's border in Ukraine, what became the Maidan Revolution in late 2013. And for Putin, he sees these two things as connected, right? It's the West basically trying to overthrow Russia, overthrow his own regime, and they're doing it wherever they can. And so the Kremlin in early 2014 makes a decision to annex Crimea, which is a peninsula on the Black Sea that is part of Ukraine. It had beforehand been part of Russia during the Soviet period, but it went to Ukraine during the Soviet Union, and Russia's Black Sea Fleet is there. This is the only warm water port that they have, and it's important. And so amidst all of this chaos, the Kremlin decides to annex Crimea. They use special forces to do it, but then they also rely on these kind of like right-wing Russian nationalist chauvinists, kind of the folks in sort of Russia's own nationalist militant movement to provide some of the security on the peninsula for the annexation. And after its success, the Kremlin thinks everything's done and dusted. But kind of unbeknownst to them at the time, or kind of something that was unexpected, was that amidst this revolution in Ukraine, there's also an anti-Maidan movement, especially in eastern Ukraine, in this region called Donbass, which is economically and culturally closer to Russia. And so as Ukrainians are taking over government buildings to overthrow the government of Yanukovych, anti-Maidan protesters are taking over these buildings in Donbass, in Donetsk, and in Luhansk. And this puts Putin and the Kremlin into a difficult situation, because unlike Crimea, they didn't want to annex eastern Ukraine, Donbass. It's not that important to Russia. But Putin is kind of boosting his nationalist credentials by annexing Crimea, gives a big kind of rally around the flag effect. And crucially, this is a rally around the flag from people who, these nationalists, these Russian nationalists and militant guys who were against Putin's rule in 2012 and were marching against him. And so he can't be seen as letting these separatists in eastern Ukraine hang out to dry. But he doesn't want to risk further sanctions from the West, international isolation. And so the Kremlin has to think very quickly, like, how do we support but not support these separatists in eastern Ukraine? And this is where Yevgeny Prigozhin, the guy who's providing the meals for the Russian military, becomes acquainted with another guy, Dmitry Utkin, who is a former GRU officer, Russian military intelligence. He fought in Chechnya. He was stationed near Estonia, and he had just come back and almost got in big trouble for this kind of misadventure with a Russian PMC in Syria. These two guys come together and they sign an agreement whereby Utkin will provide the tactical knowledge, provide the men as contractors, and Prigozhin will provide the political backing and the financial support for this mercenary group that is very closely, if not basically, as Marat was saying, a Ministry of Defense project that they send into eastern Ukraine right across the border to support the separatists.
It's interesting because when I interviewed Eric Prince, we had spoken about Eric Prince earlier, they reached out to Eric Prince to try to help build Wagner Group off of Blackwater. Did you know that?
To tell the truth, I am not completely agree with this opinion. Firstly, Wagner Group has nothing to do with the private sector.
So what was the recruitment? How do they recruit their fighters?
So as Marat was saying, I mean, it's word of mouth, basically. And I think Marat will tell you later as well. The initial group of Wagner, which came out of this PMC that had the year before gone to Syria. So before Wagner, there were a number of kind of what we would think of as like Western style PMCs that had popped up. And largely in response to the Somali piracy crisis, which I'm sure you remember, there was an opportunity for these Russian contractors to protect Russian ships that are going through the Gulf of Aden. A number of Russian contractors were even working in Iraq during the war on terror as well. The issue is that mercenarism is illegal in Russia, technically. And so these firms would basically establish themselves in like Hong Kong or the Bahamas or something along those lines. And then the client would provide them with the weapons when they showed up going through a third country to protect the ship or what have you. And there was this one group called Marat Group where Dmitry Utkin, after he left the service, went to go work for. And one of the founders of Marat got a contract with a Syrian oligarch in 2013 to, at least what the guys thought at the time, to basically protect oil and gas assets from ISIS. And when they showed up, it turned out that the Syrians wanted them to actually take those assets from ISIS. And there was almost like a little mutiny among the contractors, but they went ahead and they got ambushed. And Dmitry Utkin actually got the guys out safely during a sandstorm. They all go back to Russia, kind of with their tail between the legs, and the FSB, the successor to the KGB, arrests and charges the two commanders who went to Syria with mercenarism. Utkin, who's like one level below, gets off along with all the rest of the guys. And only a couple of months later, all of a sudden, Russia needs mercenaries. They know who is interested in this type of work because they almost arrested the guy in Syria. And so those same 50 guys or so formed the core of what was just then called the company. And Dmitry Utkin, who is a fan of the German composer Richard Wagner, takes his call sign Wagner in Donbass. And since he was the main commander, eventually it becomes kind of the catch-all term for the company more generally.
Okay. So it sounds like when Marat came in, it was about 600 people.
So when Marat first came in April 2015, I think it was getting close to about 600 guys. He can correct me if I'm wrong. And Marat was coming in in April 2015. So this is right around the time that Russia is actually trying to sort of get to a ceasefire and take over these separatist republics at the time. And so when Marat joined, Wagner was a bit different at the time. It was one of many different forces that the MOD was using to support these separatists, and no one thought that it was going to become what it became.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was one of several units that were kind of figuring out ways to bring volunteers in to support the separatists. And Wagner at that time had this group of 50 guys or so who had been in Syria, but they also had a unit of Serbian volunteers that were coming through. And so when Marat joined, he was initially part of the international brigade, which was largely Serbian, and he had a Serbian commander. Eventually, the Serbs would be kind of kicked by the wayside later on when we got to Syria. But when Marat joined, it was a few months before some of the final big battles, before we saw what was called the Minsk II ceasefire between Ukraine and the separatist statelets backed by Russia at the time.
Okay. Okay. Is it true that they started recruiting out of the prisons?
Conflict situation with the crime boss.
With a crime boss?
With the crime boss. And
what was the situation?
the criminal using any opportunity to take some money from anyone. And this situation emerged on the empty place. But as a result, during the meeting, I shoot him.
You shot him.
Shot him. And I was sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Where did you shoot him? Where? In the head?
No, in the body.
In the body.
And then in the head. I was in prison in Krasnoyarsk in Siberia. At that time, I served in Siberia. Our regiment was removed from the Chisinau to Siberia after Soviet Union collapsed.
So they, I think Wagner at the beginning, and I think this what Marat will tell you was, for the most part, guys who had military experience like Marat, guys who had trouble adjusting to civilian life in some shape or form and wanted to experience the adventure and camaraderie again. And largely through word of mouth, were recruited to the company when they found out there was this opportunity in Ukraine or eventually later on in Syria and elsewhere. And so for the most part, it was guys coming out of the military. Maybe they had a brush with the law, like Marat had, to put it lightly. But the full convict recruitment program, where if you saw the videos of Prigozhin going around to all of the penal colonies and recruiting prisoners, that only happened after 2022 for Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Okay.
So there were definitely dudes who had served prison time, got out, and then joined Wagner, but they weren't recruiting from the prisons at that time. It was really, I mean, if I remember correctly, it was Marat's buddy from his military times who recruited him just by word of mouth. He said, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to join?"
And
What was the test like? You said you had to take some type of a test to get into Wagner Group?
You have to meet the time. And push up 55 time.
55 push-ups,
Push up.
a 3-kilometer run. Were there any tactics involved, like room clearance, entering a building?
Oh, no.
No, nothing like that.
No.
What are these guys getting paid?
I think it depended, but they usually were getting about $2,000 a month during their time on the contract. And so this is pretty good money in Russia for guys. So it's definitely a motivating factor.
What is it developed into? I mean, they're in Africa.
Yeah.
They're in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Aren't they doing breweries? They're doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
What all are they involved in?
So what I think is interesting about this story, because Marat will tell you, this was very much a state-supported entity. But, and we can ask Marat as well. Again, I also don't think it could have become what it was if it weren't for the ambition of its founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin, as well. And so, kind of, if we look at what was happening in Ukraine in 2015, a lot of those units that the MOD was supporting after the ceasefire, they just kind of, dispersed, went home, didn't really do much after. But only a few months later, Russia's overtly intervening in Syria. There's nothing covert about it, right? It's a full, air campaign with the Russian military. And Prigozhin and Utkin are very much also lobbying to make sure that he gets his guys into there, because he has now this kind of force at his disposal. And what he's good at is trying to figure out, okay, I have this, now what do I do with it? Mm-hmm. And it was at this point where I think he saw the black waters of the world, and he said, okay, I want to do kind of my version of this. And it so happened that Syria was going to be the next opportunity for him to do so. And so Marat was one of the first guys on the ground in Syria. As he'll tell you, the MOD didn't really know what to do with him. And a couple of guys got killed, and they didn't want casualties right away, so they panicked and sent them home. And it was only until it became clear that Russian air power alone wasn't going to defeat the rebels against Assad or ISIS, that Wagner was brought back in. This time, on the ground, where they take Palmyra, then they get sent home again. Then they get back in, and Marat will tell you all about the Battle of Khasham. But it gets to that point where it's this mix, right? They have state backing, but Prigozhin is also out there with his guys, basically doing business development, right? If you have a PMC, where are you going to market your services? You have to go to Africa at some point. Otherwise, you should fire your B&D guy. And so already in 2017, Prigozhin is sending his guys out to drum up new business. They first signed a contract with the Sudanese to provide training, and they get access to mining concessions in Sudan. Then they show up in the Central African Republic, where there's really no other kind of competition from other Russians, and so Prigozhin is able to provide training. He offers his information warfare, because he has the troll farms, which were kind of very famous in the U.S. during the 2016 elections. And his guys go out and they try to start breweries, and they go into gold mining and what have you. They act, as Marat was saying, very independently of the Kremlin, because these places aren't that important to Russia. And so in the places that aren't important, he has to figure out his own ways to finance these operations. And so they go from the Central African Republic, they're in Libya, backing Haftar in his bid to take Tripoli in 2019. Then they show up in Mali, where they sign a deal with the Malian government to go after various jihadi groups. And then ultimately, they are initially left out of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 and only get brought in when the Russian government's in trouble.
So these guys are not, they're definitely not just in Russia's best interest. They're doing their own thing in all these separate parts of the world.
Yeah, but I think that it's not because people are always asked, is this a private thing or a public thing? And the answer is both. And I mean, we're in Paris right now, but when I'm sitting in Washington, D.C., I try to explain to people, like, this is the capital of public-private partnerships, right? Lockheed Martin is a profit-driven company.
Mm-hmm.
They will frame whatever they're doing as furthering America's national defense and security, but they're also a profit-driven. And so what Prigozhin was very good at was selling back to the Kremlin this dream of kind of Russia's expansion abroad.
Gotcha.
And he could sell it back to Putin, these different initiatives that were also just happened to be, potentially profitable to him.
Interesting. All right, let's move to Syria. My partner, the award-winning precious metals company Goldco, has a special offer for you. Right now, you can get a free gold and silver kit. You'll learn about how gold and silver can help you protect your retirement savings. On top of that, you could get unlimited free bonus silver if you qualify. That's right, as a special offer for being a supporter of my show, you could get unlimited free silver when you open a qualified account. So don't wait, the sky is the limit. With everything happening in the world today, it's time to learn about gold and silver. Get your free gold and silver kit from my partners at Goldco today. Are your savings protected? Do you have a hedge against market risk and uncertainty? Learn why gold has been breaking record after record. I believe there's no better time to get your free gold and silver kit. Go to ShawnLikesGold.com. That's ShawnLikesGold.com. With everything that's happening in the economy, it feels like we're all walking on shaky ground. Prices are high, and it seems like nothing is affordable anymore. It's no wonder many are relying on credit cards to cover the gaps. Credit card debt is skyrocketing, and it's leaving a lot of people stressed out. If you're a homeowner, you don't have to face this uncertainty alone. My friends at American Financing can help you take control. They can help you access the equity in your home to help you pay down that high-interest credit card debt, giving you peace of mind and real savings. On average, people just like you are saving $800 a month. Plus, they may close your loan in as little as 10 days. Don't let the chaos of the economy get the best of you. Call American Financing now. It costs you nothing to get started, and you may delay 2 mortgage payments, giving you a cushion in this uncertain time. Call 866-781-8900. That's 866-781-8900, or go to americanfinancing.net/SRS. All right, Marat, let's go to when you got on the ground in Syria.
First time in September in 2015. I think Prigozhin is looking for the opportunity to implement this completely new concept of the using military forces. And he wants to demonstrate the ability, combat ability of the mercenaries. And we were delivered to Syria by the scheduled civilian flight of civilian, to tell the truth, military, Russian military. Firstly, looked at us with a surprise. They don't didn't know who we are and what we to do here and how they must to treat us. And after we received the weapon, we take a part in several military action and demonstrated the whole superiority on the superiority over enemy, and of course the whole superiority over the Bashar Assad army. But I think at that moment Russian military and Syrian military thought that they handle this situation without us. Russian military thought that if they provided Syrian army with airstrike support, Syrian army can achieve the victory in this war. But it turned out that Syrian army degraded to the point of inability to wage offensive action.
And so, like as Marat is saying, when Russia first intervenes in Syria, one of the reasons that they're doing it, actually, it's after the annexation of Crimea, and they recognize the importance of Syria at that time for the U.S. and for the West, because this is, if you remember 2015, this is when ISIS is really at its height with the territorial caliphate, and the U.S. has already intervened, gone back in to fight ISIS. And so the Russians think that if we go in backing Assad, we can kind of force the U.S. into a joint counterterrorism operation against ISIS that will force them to kind of basically start talking to us again.
Okay.
And so they come in and they're backing Assad, but as Marat's saying, Assad's government, I mean, the forces that he has are incredibly unmotivated. I mean, for obvious reasons, given his rule, and the rebels, not just ISIS, but all the other rebels fighting against them, are a lot more motivated. And the Russians initially wanted it to just be an air campaign. But I mean, as you find out pretty quick, like air campaigns alone rarely work for anybody. And it was clear that Russian air power with Assad's forces on the ground was not going to work. They were not going to take the territory back from rebels. And so, but they face an issue at the time, which I think you speak to as well, where this is kind of a faraway intervention for Russia, and they haven't figured out yet if they want to have actual Russian troops on the ground, and what Russians will think, the Russian public will think, if Russian soldiers are going home in caskets. And there's a sense that they're going to be against this and say, why are we here in Syria? And so one of the reasons that Marat and Wagner were able to get back in is that the Russian military didn't have to report casualties for Wagner.
And using the mercenaries in this war to take in, could resolve the very very difficult task. The thing is that Russian generals invented the concept of the war with a little bloodshed. And using the mercenaries, they can create some kind of appearances that this concept is working. Lost of the mercenaries didn't include in the official statistic.
Okay, that makes sense. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole point of Russia going into Syria to include Wagner was to build some type of an alliance with the United States
Yeah, it was an
against
effort.
ISIS.
It was an effort because, in part, there's always a lot of reasons why things happen, but the timing of their intervention. Because if you remember, Syria started going into civil war right around the time of the Arab Spring. So this is already like 5 years before that. The Russians didn't have any particular love for Assad, despite the fact that there was a Russian base in Syria and kind of some history going back to the Soviet Union. What really explains the timing of why they went in was this sense of isolation that they felt after the annexation of Crimea in 2014 in Ukraine. And it was this effort to basically get themselves onto the world stage again in a crisis that they thought was existentially important to the West, which was the defeat of ISIS. Of course, also when they show up and they're on the ground, Assad also has different ideas for what he wants the Russians to do. And ISIS is less of a concern to him than a lot of the more secular rebels elsewhere as well. And that he wants the Russians to go after those guys. Whereas the Russians want to go try and meet up with the Americans as they're closing in on ISIS, as the territorial caliphate is kind of crumbling down.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about the Battle of Khasham between Wagner and U.S. Special Forces. So, like I'd mentioned, I have friends that were in that battle. It sounds like there was around 500 Wagner Group soldiers on the ground. There were 40 U.S. Special Forces guys, along with a couple with a Kurdish partner force. And so, let's just start with the beginning. What were you doing that close to American forces?
From the very beginning, this factory was very important. This factory enclosed all infrastructure of the oil field nearby, nearby Konaca. And Prigozhin wanted to seize this factory during the battle for the Deir Zor. But we have no enough resources. We constantly we forced to attract our forces in order to achieve a goal, in order to liberate Deir Zor. Our allies was very undecisively acted, very undecisively, and we cannot using our forces in order to advance forward.
Can I put like a little bit before where, so, like what was like why did Prigozhin want to take these Conoco facilities?
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2016, Marat and Wagner, they capture Palmyra from ISIS. And Marat has, I think, some of the medals from that and from that time period that they'll show. But after the capture, the Russian military sends Wagner home again. And then a few months later, ISIS recaptures it, Palmyra, and Wagner comes back in. But this time, Prigozhin has signed a deal with Assad's government. And part of the deal is that Wagner will participate in the counteroffensive, and Prigozhin and his companies get a 25% share of the proceeds of the oil and gas assets that are recuperated. And so Prigozhin has this massive incentive now to go out against ISIS and capture as much of those assets as he can. And so in 2017, Marat and Wagner are back in Syria, and this is right around the time where ISIS is collapsing. The U.S. Is backing the Kurdish SDF. The SDF is coming from the northeast, south. They're heading for the ISIS's capital, Raqqa. And Wagner and Assad forces are heading north. And at a certain point, there's this factory that Marat is talking about called Conoco, which is sort of the crown jewel of all the assets. It's valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And it was one of ISIS's most valuable assets for fuel smuggling.
The most rich, most profitable oil field in Syria.
So Prigozhin wants this. And he's sending letters, too, to the Syrian government saying that they're not upholding their end of the bargain, that he's spending all of this money on the offensive and the Syrians aren't paying him. So he sees Conoco as the way to kind of get profitability, get out of the red and into the black. The only issue is that as ISIS is collapsing, everyone is thinking what a post-ISIS world is going to look like. So the Kurds, with the blessing of the U.S., start moving away from Raqqa and heading south towards Deir ez-Zor. And there's a rush for who's going to get this Conoco plant when ISIS is gone. And the SDF, the Kurdish forces backed by special forces, get there first. And then this is where Prigozhin
made a mistake. He thought that he can achieve his goal as a result in negotiation with the elders of the Kurdish tribe. But at that time, functionaries of the SPS was in charge of the whole thing, and the oldest of the tribes, they like Prigozhin.
Kurdish elders.
They guarantee. They gave a guarantee that Kurdish forces retreat as soon as we started to move forward. But they just lied.
How many guys did you have gathered to attack Conoco at that time?
I think about 500, 2 units, Karpaty and 5th assault units, and my group that consists of Syrian fighters, 75. 75 men. This was only units of Syrian that took part in this action. No one else. Only Russian mercenaries and this group of Syrian fighters. only this. I had to advance on the left flank and take over two strongholds. We advanced on the start line of attack, but American prevented us. They struck on the second echelon, headquarter, artillery position, склады вооружения,
the armory.
Armory, and then they shift the fire on us.
Did you guys fire on them?
From the sky, American uses at the beginning. American uses only aviation.
They had 2 Spectre gunships and 2 Apaches. Helicopters.
Yeah, combat drones, Spooky, and combat helicopter.
And so what was going through your head when you knew that? So U.S. Special Operations initiated the attack.
No. What you should tell them is start from the beginning of the morning, because this happened on February 8th, right?
February, the night.
The night of February.
Between 7 and
Between 7th and
8 February.
And you were in the room the day before or a couple of days before, where Utkin, he comes in and he says, "We're gonna take this from the Americans."
Yeah.
And someone said, "Are the Americans going to be there?" And he said, "Yeah."
Yes, I don't know why, but Prigozhin decided that American weren't involved, and
That the Americans
I
would
don't
just
know
fall
why.
back.
The thing is, the Prigozhin have one features, как черта характера.
It's like personality trait.
From time to time, his ego rose above the common sense.
Maybe something that it might look cool, and no one has done this before. If we get a piece of paper and Marat can show where the Americans were and how Wagner came over with the arrows and stuff. That way people can get.
Yeah.
No one's done this before. So, do you want to show? You have the river, Euphrates.
Mm-hmm.
Then you want to show where Conoco is, and then where Wagner in the U.S. was.
Euphrat, Konica, Khasham.
And so
we were completely destroyed.
So this is
our position.
This is your position.
The factory.
This is Quantico.
Yeah.
And this is the Kurds in the U.S.
No, the Kurds in the U.S. are in here in the Conoco facility.
On the
And this
Conoco.
is Wagner's 2 positions right here.
They're inside the facility.
No. Facility is around like this.
Yeah.
And then they go and attack that
But the
way.
U.S. was inside the
U.S. was
facility.
inside the facility.
So Wagner initiated an attack.
Yes.
Shit, it's what planned action with signs of the false artillery assault from the Kurdish.
And you guys, you knew that U.S. Special Operations were in the factory.
Yes, we know about it.
Were you worried?
We knew about it. Don't worry. Our chief, our commander, told us that American wanted involved.
But they wouldn't get involved.
Yeah, as I already said, I don't know why, but Prigozhin was convinced that American forces wanted involved.
Wow.
Don't
What's
know
this
why.
distance here? What's the distance here? How many kilometers?
Distance between my units and first stronghold, about 300 meters.
300 meters? That's it?
We moved very close to this position, and we have already ready to attack, but American prevented us from any.
But what you know too is that what your buddies will say who are there is, so the other key thing is this is the Euphrates right here. And so during this kind of counter ISIS operation, the Russians and the Americans are trying to figure out ways that they can deconflict, right? So that no one is actually shooting each other.
You all know what speed dating is, right? Well, if you're the owner of a growing business, what if there was a feature like speed dating, but only for hiring? In other words, you could meet several interested, qualified candidates all at once. Well, good news. There is. It's Zip Intro from ZipRecruiter. You can post your job today and start talking to qualified candidates tomorrow. And right now, you can try Zip Intro for free. It's ziprecruiter.com/SRS. Zip Intro gives you the power to quickly assess excellent candidates for your job via back-to-back video calls. You simply pick a time, and Zip Intro does all the work of finding and scheduling qualified candidates for you. Then you can choose who you want to talk to and meet with great people as soon as the next day. It's so easy. Enjoy the benefits of speed hiring with new Zip Intro, only from ZipRecruiter, rated the #1 hiring site based on G2. Try Zip Intro for free at ziprecruiter.com/SRS. Again, that's ziprecruiter.com/SRS. Zip Intro. Post jobs today. Talk to qualified candidates tomorrow. It's spring, the sun's out, and it's time to feel comfortable every time you step out. Feel relaxed in True Classic shirts. They are designed to accentuate the important areas like your arms and chest while giving your midsection some breathing room. True Classic has everything you need to look great and be comfortable this spring. Crew necks, short sleeve comfort knit button-ups, comfort knit chino shorts, and more. Whether you're running errands or attending events, you can definitely feel the difference in the quality when you're wearing your favorite classic shirts from True Classic. True Classic offers premium clothes at an affordable price. Their best-selling t-shirts, jeans, and more come in 3, 6, and 9 packs. The more you bundle, the more you save. Plus, get free shipping on all orders, a 100% perfect fit guarantee, and easy returns. This spring, level up your style with clothes that actually fit right. Go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/SRS to save. That's trueclassic.com/SRS. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe today.
Because there's a lot of guys running around in this area now, and so they create this kind of line of deconfliction between U.S. backed forces in Syria and Russian backed forces, and the line is pretty much the Euphrates River, which is right here, and that's established, and so but the issue for Prigozhin is that the most profitable oil fields right across on the other side of the deconfliction line. And so Marat and Wagner, what they're doing prior to this is they're building up their forces. They're testing a little bit the line of deconfliction probably. Because they cross the river and there's this one little spot that is still Russian territory. And so the Americans are watching this on the drones, and they're seeing the buildup. They see it all day, and eventually, in the evening, they start calling the Russians over the deconfliction line that they have between the U.S. and Russian militaries, and they say, "Are these your guys?" And the Russian military says, "No."
No. They denied.
They denied it.
He denied to признать.
Confirm. Yeah.
Confirm.
Yeah.
What did you initiate the assault with?
Какое оборудование, вооружение?
I have well, I was supported firstly by the artillery.
Artillery. So you were hitting Conoco with artillery.
What they were first doing was they were faking artillery training because they had set themselves up close.
Mortar.
Mortars.
Mortar.
Yeah.
Mortar artillery. Americans very quickly suppressed the activity of any kind of artillery. And I left without any support. I have automatic rifle, machine gun, automatic grenade launcher, AGS-17, and some kind, and two machine gun, heavily machine gun.
The
But
fifth
it was
unit.
nothing against the.
The fifth unit had tanks, right? There were two tanks.
This tank was on the right side from me. I saw the tank only at the last time before this tank was destroyed. I heard the shoot. I heard the sound of shooting, and I come out of the position, and I saw our tank. And firstly, I decided this is good for me, but immediately after I glanced on him, he was destroyed by the rocket, and there was absolutely and there was a big explosion. This tank was completely destroyed.
Because
What was going through your head when the Americans retaliated?
To save my life. Save lives of my people. I cried him, run away from here. Run away, in any way, run away, but only small group. Only with a small group.
Small groups.
2-3 person, not gathering.
Yeah.
But
You wanted to disperse.
it was in vain. They unfortunately in any way gathered together and fall on the fire from the helicopter. and I lost 23 fighters. 23 fighters was killed.
Were you close with them? Were you friends with them?
Ты дружил с этими людьми, которые...
Как?
Ты дружил с людьми, которые...
No, it was a very little time to become a friendship. I was appointed on this position 2.5 weeks before this event.
23 dead, 28 wounded. Is that correct?
In his unit only.
In your unit?
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I think the thing that is also kind of important for people to realize is, you know, it's getting towards the evening, and Wagner, they're feigning drills and then they attack, right? And the U.S. is calling, and they call 3 times over the deconfliction line to the Russian Ministry of Defense, and they say, "Are these your guys?" And 3 times the Ministry of Defense says no. And so, as you know, and your buddies know, that's when the U.S. had the green light to effectively defend themselves against this attack. And I think it's fair to say that the U.S. Defended itself in a way that would send a message as well. And the amount of air power that came in was probably disproportionate to the threat and designed to send a message, because I mean the amount of
I think Americans didn't care of didn't care of the facility of the Russian army. They didn't care. They was ready to strike in any case, and they
were ready.
I think they absolutely didn't fear to use their weapons.
That's generally the sentiment. I mean, these guys are at war. That's what they want to do.
No. Yeah.
And they did it.
And you said, I mean, the U.S. brought in like 2 Apaches.
2 Apaches and 2 Spectre gunships.
Oh.
And Spectre gunship is...
Russian generals was completely confused by this situation. Russian generals didn't have an ability to take a responsibility and to make a decision как самостоятельно. Independently. And when he encountered with this situation, he confused absolutely.
Because the question is, right, why did the Russian Ministry of Defense deny that it was Russians who were attacking? And there is an argument, I think, to be made. Like Prigozhin, his gamble in trying to take Konovo was that when the Americans saw that it was Russians coming, the Americans would want to avoid any direct confrontation, World War III, and they would back away and retreat along with the Kurds. And he was incredibly mistaken in that calculation. And what I think he wasn't counting on, and what Marat is saying, is that when the Americans were calling into the Ministry of Defense, you have some poor guy on the line who is also not going to be responsible for World War III. And so the quickest thing that you're going to do is not say, yeah, those are my guys attacking U.S. soldiers. You're going to say, don't know anything about it, don't know what you're talking about, and try to go to your higher ups to cover your own butt. And so ultimately it was probably, Prigozhin probably had kind of a wink and a nod from the Ministry of Defense that he was going to try to do this. And if it worked out, it's a great Russian victory for everybody. Assad, the Russians, Prigozhin. And if it doesn't, in the Ministry of Defense's mind, it's just Wagner guys who are getting killed.
Wow. How long did the battle go on for?
How long? About 6 hours.
6
And,
hours.
from the midnight to morning. About midnight to morning. 89 Russian mercenaries was killed in this battle, and 23 Syrian fighters from my union was killed.
How many
And
wounded?
no, about 200.
200 dead.
Two
200
units.
wounded.
2 units.
200 wounded.
2 assault units was completely destroyed. I mean, weapon, technique, and
Like 300 casualties
and
total.
on the next day, Russian authority proclaimed that no one Russian suffered in this event.
Wow.
No one.
And you were responsible for counting the bodies, right? And reporting it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And I must to bring the body of the dead of the dead Syrian in the town in the city. Was headquarters of my battalion.
Oh, so he was there for the ceremony of the burial.
Burial.
Yeah, before we get there, what ended it? Why did they stop? If they didn't kill everybody, what stopped it?
After I coming back from this battle, I gave an order to send my people to bring a body and a weapon on the battlefield. Brought from this area all body and all weapons that was left on this area during the battle.
So eventually in the morning, the Ministry of Defense got in touch with the Americans, and it was agreed, the Americans agreed to a 2-hour pause so that the Russians could collect weapons and dead.
So if the Ministry of Defense of Russia initially denied this 3 different times, then how do they contact the U.S. to ask to clean up the bodies?
They can they could say that so in the very beginning, and if they say yes, okay, I will give an order to retreat, and if Russian generals to give an order to retreat, nothing happened. And everything will be fine. But Russian generals didn't know what to do in this situation.
But eventually they told the Americans,
Right.
we need to go collect.
Yeah.
So eventually they said there might be some Russians there, to the Americans.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, this it has already happened
Yeah, there's no
Oh.
denying it anymore.
We were destroyed.
Yeah.
The whole field was covered with corpses and burned tank and trucks of our units. Everyone who can move left this area, and
So there was only bodies
and come
left.
to the bank of the river.
So there were only bodies left.
Yeah.
And then the agreement was made that they have 2 hours to go back to the area to collect the dead.
How does that make you feel now, knowing that the Russian military had denied 3 different times that it was Russians on the ground, and then also told the Russian people that there were no Russians that were killed in that battle?
Firstly, I think the American acted as it according to the situation. If I were on their place, I will do the same action. It's a rules of war. If you under attack, you must to protect themselves and wage and counterattack. Secondly, I think it was bad thing from the side of our chief. It was the Prigozhin and Wagner was absolutely wrong in this situation. It's absolutely wrong. But
By Wagner, he means Utkin.
yeah. This battle was the offensive, was the defensive action from the outside. We was under attack of Kurdish forces, and despite of the heavy losses, we can stay. We can stay on our place and to protect and protected our position. But what surprised me very much that many of our guys that took part in this battle accepted this version.
Wow. Wow.
Accepted this version that it's a nonsense.
Wow.
But this is true. I spoke with some guys and trying to remind them that, do you remember, we are going to assault. No one attacked us. We initiated this event. Only we have responsibility for the circumstances of this battle.
I think probably every American that fought that day is going to watch this. Do you have anything personally to say to them?
What can I say them? They, as I already said, they acted as according to the rules of war. It was our initiative. Nothing.
So, how long after the battle did you leave Syria?
1 year.
1 year.
But this is when you left Wagner for Redut, right?
Yes, when I left Wagner, I joined Redut, только охранял.
It only defended or like did security for. It was a different PMC, but their only job as a PMC was to secure
Secure
Static
factory.
security.
static security, exactly.
It was not for me.
Let's take a quick break. When I started this podcast, it seemed like I had to figure it out all on my own. It was overwhelming. When you're starting something new, it seems like your to-do list just keeps growing and it can overrun your entire life. Finding the right tool can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names to brands just getting started. I use Shopify to power my own business so I can keep bringing you Vigilance Elite gummy bears. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build online and is packed with helpful AI tools to accelerate your content creation. And, like a marketing team, Shopify can create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are. Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your 1 month, $1 per month trial period and start selling today at shopify.com/SRS. Go to shopify.com/SRS. Shopify.com/SRS. Think about everything you've browsed, searched for, or watched. Now imagine all that data being collected and aggregated by data brokers in a permanent public record, your record. To help keep my data private when I go online, I turn to ExpressVPN. Data brokers can easily track you through your device's unique IP address, which also reveals information about your location. With ExpressVPN, your IP address is hidden. That makes it much more difficult for data brokers to monitor, track, and monetize your private online activity. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network traffic to keep your data safe from hackers when you're on public Wi-Fi. ExpressVPN works on all your devices. Just tap one button to turn it on and you're protected. It's that easy. A lot of folks use ExpressVPN because it helps them keep their data secure online. And it's especially important for me to stay private when I'm away from home. To me, online security is just as important as physical security. Protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/SRS. That's expressvpn.com/SRS. And you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/SRS. All right, Marat. So you get back to Russia. How much longer was it until the Ukraine war kicked off?
After this event, this war began, and I left my country.
John, what was the mutiny all about?
Yeah. So I think, Marat, as he's saying, he goes back, he finishes his work in Syria. But I mean, after the Battle of Khasham, in which Marat participated, I mean, already by this point, we were talking about it earlier, Wagner is in Sudan by this point. By around the same time as the Battle of Khasham, they first start arriving in the Central African Republic, and then they're showing up in all sorts of places in Africa, Libya, and in Mali. And over there, Prigozhin is acting kind of independently, like we were talking about. But as the Battle of Khasham kind of showed, Prigozhin himself is not always on the same page as the Ministry of Defense and Minister of Defense Shoigu. And he's sort of a rock in their shoe very often. You have to imagine, here's this guy who is kind of technically supposed to, with his forces, be subordinate, but he also has a mind and ambition of his own. And he can occasionally get in front of Putin himself. And you can imagine what he's saying about the people that he doesn't like in front of Putin. So, imagine, you're the boss of an employee, but the employee's dad is the CEO, right? I mean, that there's another channel that goes up if you try to, if you try to boss them around. And so, even though the Ministry of Defense and Wagner are cooperating in Africa quite a bit, there's still that interpersonal tension. And so when Putin makes a decision to launch the full-scale war in Ukraine in February 2022, he gives the planning of it over to the General Staff in the Ministry of Defense, and they want nothing to do with Prigozhin. And so their thinking at the time is that this is going to be a quick, easy victory, and we can do it kind of in their mind by the book without having to use guys like Prigozhin. And so in the initial month or so of the invasion, Wagner is actually left out. And Prigozhin is pissed about it. He's calling up the guys in the GRU, trying to figure out why his guys aren't in it, and then trying to get his guys into it. And meanwhile, the very quick operation to take Kiev does not go as planned, and the Russian military is suffering setbacks. And so Prigozhin now has his opportunity to get his guys into the war. And the thing about Wagner that I think Marat would tell you too is that in the intervening years, really since Chechnya and a very brief war with Georgia, not a lot of guys in the Russian military have real battle experience. Like, not a lot of people have been shot at. And so when Wagner comes in with its commanders, they start delivering some quick battlefield victories. And so this puts Prigozhin all of a sudden in this great position. He's able to come out of the shadows, and he becomes a hero of Russia. He declares himself, he denied it always that he was tied to Wagner Group. Now he declares, I was always the founder of Wagner. And he's on state television. And as Marat said, this is a guy who already has a big ego, right? And the way that he always gets around his rivals is by gambling big, like at Khasham. And so he starts also promising things that he's going to do, something that the generals would never do. And ultimately, what he ends up promising is that Wagner is going to take Bakhmut, this kind of middle-sized city, from Ukrainian forces. And the way that he's going to do it is he gets exclusive permission for a time to go to all of Russia's prisons and recruit prisoners to the front line. And so he shows up, and he goes himself. I mean, he's a guy who does a lot of things himself.
Yes, I mean, he was deprived for the resources of the mobilization.
Yeah, he wasn't allowed to have actual soldiers, and so he gets the convicts. And so he shows up at these Russian penal colonies, and they gather all the prisoners into the prison yard. And he comes in his helicopter, and he comes in and he speaks in front of all of the prisoners, and he says, I have an offer for you. You can come and fight for me for 6 months, and if you survive, you're a free man, and your criminal record is expunged. And he tells them that my losses are worse than Stalingrad, which obviously resonates with Russians, and ultimately about 50,000 guys sign up. And the tactic that Prigozhin is going to use to take Bakhmut is the human human wave tactic. And so these convicts, they get 2 weeks training, usually, I think, just inside kind of the border with Ukraine and around Luhansk. And then after that, they're sent to the front, and basically they're put in small units, and each small unit one unit will go out, attack the Ukrainian position. 8 guys might be killed, but 2 guys get into the trench, and they do some damage before getting killed, and before the Ukrainians have a chance to recover, another unit of convicts is coming through. And so it's a very inefficient way to wage war, but it is effective over time. And so
the thing is that the main reason for this operation was to attract as many Ukrainian forces as possible, in order to prevent from the attacks on the other areas of the front line.
Yeah.
And
because you can imagine, it's a huge front line now, right? In Ukraine. In the beginning, the first phase of the war in Donbass, it's a little section of the Donbass region. Now it's like 1,000 kilometers long, maybe, or something. And so he's also engaged with the Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians are sending some of their best guys to defend Bakhmut, while for the Russian government, they're losing, in their mind, some of the worst people in society, right? These convicts. And so, it's like a 4-to-1 ratio in terms of losses, but it's something that the Russians and Prigozhin are willing to do for the reasons that Marat said. But, at this point, though, Prigozhin is like like we all know who Prigozhin is, right? During the Bakhmut campaign, he becomes like the face of the war itself. CNN is trying to reach him. The New York Times is trying to reach him for an interview. He's huge back home in Russia. He's like finally everything that he, his ego is matched now by, his popularity.
Yes, in this term, the Wagner Group completely fulfilled his mission in this war. They achieve their goals that would stand before them.
Yeah.
They attract many a lot of Ukrainian forces, and give the opportunity for the Russian army to prepare mobilizing a reserve, and to build the defensive line in the area of Zaporozhye district.
But still, I mean, there's still a lot of enmity between the Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, and Prigozhin. And so at some point, inevitably, especially since Prigozhin is having all of this success, like Marat mentioned, the Ministry of Defense is going to want to check him. And so the first way that they do it is they start cutting off Prigozhin from convict recruitment. So he's promised to Putin, I'm going to take Bakhmut, but his means of doing so now is disappearing. He needs a lot of bodies to take Bakhmut. The Ministry of Defense is cutting him off of those bodies. Not because they're against prisoner recruitment, they just start doing it themselves. But the difference is, and this is always the issue for Prigozhin, is when he was doing it, he had the permission by like a wink and a nod from the presidential administration. When the Ministry of Defense does it, Russian parliament officially makes it legal for them to recruit from prison. So there's always a way that Prigozhin can get screwed over in whatever he's doing. So he's getting cut off. And so now he starts going public with the Ministry of Defense saying, I'm not getting enough ammunition for what we're trying to do. And the Ministry of Defense is screwing over Wagner by not giving us enough ammunition, the ammunition that we need. And so now this spat starts going very public over social media. And then ultimately, Shoigu and Prigozhin at this point hate each other's guts. And the Ministry of Defense then, kind of like their final kind of counterattack on Prigozhin, is they get the Kremlin to agree that all soldiers fighting in Ukraine on behalf of Russia have to sign a contract with the Ministry of Defense.
Only those who fight on the front line.
Those on the front line. Yeah. And so for Prigozhin, you can imagine, he's this big guy now in Russia. He's got thousands and thousands of men ostensibly under his command. And he recognizes that this is making him political, too. And so all of a sudden, the Ministry of Defense is taking those men out from underneath him. And I think for him, what he saw was the writing on the wall, that at the very least, when I no longer have Wagner Group, it means that I'm going to kind of disappear into obscurity, which he wasn't able to do at that point. He couldn't just retire and be quiet. He was incapable of that. But also without those men, he doesn't have political leverage anymore, and it could result in his ultimate demise. And so he has to figure out a way, how do I convince Putin to choose between me and Shoigu? Because Putin is choosing Shoigu right now. And so the decision is made that Wagner is going to turn back from Ukraine into southern Russia, and they're going to capture and kill the Minister of Defense.
Wow.
And so on June 23rd, 2023, Wagner crosses back over. Prigozhin claims that the Ministry of Defense hit them with a rocket attack, which seems to be
That
not
is
the
a
case. False, yeah.
attack.
But it's the pretext.
Absolutely false attack.
But the pretext is now that we're going to go arrest Shoigu and another general, Gerasimov. And so they go back into Russia and they surround and take over the southern Russia's southern military command in Rostov. And they're looking for Shoigu. But Shoigu has already escaped. And so the generals who are there, they try to talk Prigozhin down.
Yes, Prigozhin thought that when he proposed to make a choice between him and between Shoigu, Prigozhin will choose, of course, him.
Putin will choose Prigozhin. Yeah.
Yes,
And he also thinks too, or is hoping in the back of his mind, that all of that popularity that he had from being on social media and being on Russian TV on the front lines of Bakhmut means that the soldiers in the Russian military itself are on his side too. And so he goes and they've taken the military command and the generals who are there are trying to talk him down, and they're not able to do it. And so Prigozhin announces that they're going to have a march for justice on Moscow. And the column of Wagner, the Wagner column turns from southern Russian military command and starts heading up the highway to Moscow. And I think everybody was glued to their TV screens to see like Wagner column heading on Moscow, and the mayor of Moscow. They started digging up the highway around Moscow to prevent their potential arrival. Wagner shoots down, I think, a number of helicopters and planes. About 13 people are killed. But each time, Prigozhin is getting closer and closer to Moscow, and he's also kind of going into empty space. And so now he's trying to communicate to Putin that all he is trying to do is take out his rivals Shoigu and Gerasimov. He's not trying to overthrow Putin himself.
No.
But the issue is, the closer he's getting to Moscow, the more he could accidentally be unleashing a coup, because it's going to be such a destabilizing moment. And so at some point, he's trying to say, I'm not overthrowing the government, but now it's getting close to looking like he might overthrow the government if he gets into Moscow. And behind the scenes, the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, is negotiating between Putin's side and Prigozhin. And eventually he gets Prigozhin to agree to halt the march. And I think for Prigozhin himself, he was a little bit relieved, because he was realizing that events were going out of his control they were hardly in his control beforehand, but they were, as the closer he was getting to Moscow and they got within 150 miles, things were really starting to get out of control, and he backs down. And you could make an argument that the guy who had, an insane risk tolerance, from going against Americans in the Battle of Khasham and risking his neck, saying he's going to take Bakhmut, like, this was perhaps the one moment where he should have doubled down and gone all the way to Moscow, but he chose not to. And
Prigozhin didn't want to take over the power.
yeah,
and I think Prigozhin eventually realized that he didn't take into account one simple thing. Putin don't need the Ministry of Defense, professional Ministry of the qualifying and the efficiency Minister for Defense. He need a close alliance, supporter.
no.
And when Prigozhin realized,
soldier himself.
When Prigozhin realized that in any case he cannot to achieve his goal, he gave an order to turn around.
And that sealed his fate, ultimately, 3 months later.
As far as a conflict between the Ministry of Defense and Prigozhin, this conflict was permanent. The main reason, from the moment of the creation, the brigade of Mercenaries Brigade, and from the moment when Prigozhin became a sole curator of this project, this conflict began. Began.
Because it works for the system too.
The main reason, of course, money.
Yeah.
Prigozhin, Wagner Group was funded bypassing the Ministry of Defense, and Shoigu was deprived from the opportunity to use this money for to profit from this flow of the money.
Because that's how you make big money in Russia, is by skimming off of the state budgets. So everything is a battle over the flow of budget, because the more budget that comes your way, the more you can line your own pockets.
Yes, of course. Prigozhin Wagner Group was funded directly from the state budget. Bypassing.
Yeah, and it went all the way down. And so one of the reasons that, one of the ways that people were making money in Donbass in 2014, 2015, right, is you're a commander, and you tell the Ministry of Defense, oh, I have 200 guys under my command. The Ministry of Defense pays your salaries, but you actually have 150 or 125 guys under your command. So
Not the case in the term of the Prigozhin. Prigozhin don't act
He was at a
in
bigger
this way.
level.
It's some мелкие мошенники.
the small money, that's small money laundering though.
Да.
So, was he assassinated?
Yes.
And
Do you think the государство убил Пригожина, да?
no, I don't know what who exactly кстати, was как исполнитель.
Who was the actual person who did it? He doesn't know.
Who is actual person who did it? Prigozhin had many enemies.
So you're saying it could have been anybody. It might not have been the Ministry of Defense or Putin himself.
I think a lot of people would put it on the FSB, which is the kind of the Russian successor to the KGB, which handles domestic threats for Putin. As
Of course, the decision.
the final decision.
Final decision. Putin made a final decision. Of course.
Putin made the final
Only with his permission that can be happen.
Yeah. But who came up with the exact
Who
plan?
was executives?
Yeah.
This time will show.
So what is Wagner Group today?
Right now, since Prigozhin death, Wagner Group, in my opinion, ceased to exist.
So everything became subordinate to the Ministry of Defense.
Okay.
But the thing is that, kind of as we were talking about, like the relationship between Wagner and the state was also different in each place. And so in Syria, like when Marat was there, they get everything from the Ministry of Defense. They're probably paid through the Ministry of Defense. They're working very closely. They have Russian air power that support. I mean, this is like a Ministry of Defense operation. When you get to like the Central African Republic, there's not as much support from the Kremlin. So
Some kind of autonomy.
there's a degree of independence. They're opening up breweries. Like Ministry of Defense doesn't want breweries, or they have these gold mines. And so when Prigozhin is gone, the Ministry of Defense has to figure out, how do we take over all of these things? Because Prigozhin wasn't just involved with mercenaries like Marat. He had troll farms. He had like chocolate museums in St. Petersburg. He had mining companies.
The main body of this project was not Wagner Group.
Yeah.
Wagner Group only part of this project. Wagner Group, the military group that was used for the creation of the favorable environment to promote a business project.
Of Prigozhin. So like Wagner, what basically
Wagner Group
what
is
saying
a part of the project.
Wagner was a way for Prigozhin to overcome his status as an ex-con and try to show his worth to eventually join Putin's inner circle. He was never really able to do it. But so when he died, it was relatively easy for the Ministry of Defense in places like Syria or Libya just to have guys sign new contracts and to take over. But where they were acting independently in like the Central African Republic,
Central Defense.
the guys
special
showed up.
status.
Yeah, the
industrial.
guys showed up and they were like, they couldn't understand it. There's breweries, there's all sorts of things going on, and so the decision is made: if it's not broke, let's not fix it.
And
let them just kind of keep doing their thing.
The industrial project in Central African Republic. This is a resource for the benefit of the president of Russia and his inner circle.
Yeah. So I think some account numbers got changed in terms of the transfers.
Okay.
But-
It's a little bit difficult to take over.
Yeah, because they don't
Yes.
understand it fully.
Yeah.
Only the guys who work there
But-
know how it
But
works.
Wagner Group is over.
It's over. Well, guys, thank you. Thank you for so much for being here today and for sharing all that information. And I just want to ask you one thing. You know, we'd had a conversation earlier about your feelings on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and now you're here in France seeking asylum. I'm just curious if you have anything to say to Putin.
Что-нибудь сказать Путину?
Что я могу сказать Путину, бля? Get out.
Get out.
Get out. You are enemy for my country. You are the main problem for my country. And you're in his inner circle.
Well, thank you both for being there.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.